Good evening. You're watching Headlines Today. I'm Sanjana Chauhan. Let's quickly cut across to our top story of the day. Chinese president's visit that will mark a new chapter in Sino-Indian ties. Chinese President Xi Jingping has arrived in India on a 3-day visit. The Chinese contingent, remember, will be focusing on boosting trade and investment besides addressing the contentious border issues. Now, Chinese officials have indicated that Beijing is looking to commit between 100 to 300 billion US dollars on projects including high-speed rail and smart infrastructure. President Xi is the first Asian head of state to visit India since the new Narendra Modi government was sworn into office in May this year. His first stop is the state of Gujarat, which is not only Modi's home state, but also where China has made huge investments. Now, China is expected to commit investments worth $6.5 billion to set up industrial parks in India and sign purchase agreements of over $3 billion with domestic companies. In addition, about 16 documents are likely to be signed in areas such as trade and economic development, drug administration and cooperation. Gaurav Sawant, our strategic affairs editor, who's been tracking the movement of the Prime Minister and now the Chinese President, joining us live from Ahmedabad. Gaurav, a big meet with bigger expectations. Xi Jinping welcomed by a red carpet with Narendra Modi currently in Gujarat.
Well, Gujarat and India have rolled out the red carpet for the Chinese president. They expect major investments to take place, this relationship to be taken to the next level. The figure of $100 billion is something that the Chinese Consul General is talking about. As far as government of India is concerned, they are far more realistic in terms of what is expected in the near future, and they've pegged it anything between $6 and $10 billion in the near future. And then, of course, sky is the limit depending on how the two countries take their relationship forward. If we were to talk about what's going to happen in the immediate future, China expects to invest in sister cities, which is Gandhinagar, Ahmedabad and Guangzhou in China, Guangdong, the factory capital of the world as it's described, and Gujarat, which is described as the Guangdong of India. China is to set up a special industrial park in Gandhinagar in Ahmedabad, which is good both for India and China. China expects major returns on its investments in India, and that is where it's looking for a stable market that India provides, Sanjana.
Right, Gaurav, stay with us. We also have Anand Krishnan joining us from Beijing. Anand, we understand that Xi is accompanied by a high-powered business delegation of about 50 members from China, and there's also a media team that's accompanying the Chinese president.
Yes, I think the business delegation is pretty substantial, especially because you have Chinese banks that are keen in establishing a presence in India. You have auto companies that want to have a presence in the new industrial park that's going to come out in Maharashtra. So you have construction companies pretty much across Chinese industry is represented in the delegation. And as for the media representation, I think it's pretty normal in the sense that you have the 4 or 5 big Chinese state media outlets that travel with the Chinese president. So that's something that's usually par for the course for such trips.
Absolutely, and let's just talk about the more contentious issues, Gaurav. You know, as the two Asian giants coming together, it's the unprovoked aggression from the Chinese front, which we understand, may not really be a dominant feature, but it will definitely top the agenda when it comes to New Delhi.
Well, this is not being brushed under the carpet at all. In fact, it's being taken up at the level of the Prime Minister and the Chinese President. They will decide on the road ahead. You've had 17 rounds of boundary talks between the special representatives of the two governments. Now, will the National Security Advisor Ajit Doval be the new special representative? What will be the mechanism for talks? What will be the agenda? That is yet to be disclosed to the media. But Anant was reporting from Beijing, and Anant's written about how both India and China are hopeful of forward movement. You don't expect a solution overnight. This is a boundary dispute that's lasted 50 years. It's expected to last longer, but how do you sweeten the relationship? How do you ensure the pinpricks don't lead to bad blood? Not a bullet has been fired across the border after 1996. At the same time, tensions remain. How is it that you ensure that these pinpricks are removed remains the big question. Now, in the past, India has reported some 350 odd, between 350 and 400 Chinese incursions. What sources tell us, and Anant can tell us better in Beijing, China has reported an equally large number, if not more, of Indians reaching Indian Army soldiers going up to the Indian claim line. If they stayed in Demchok for 21 days, you've had Indian soldiers who went and who've gone and stayed at the Indian claim line even longer. So there is an issue that needs to be decided. A powerful India and a powerful China are the best ways to solve this issue without conflict. For that, India will have to increase its economic power. India will have to increase its relationship circle in this entire region that India is doing, whether it's with Japan, with Vietnam, with other countries in the region. And the same is what China is doing. So it is who needs who, how much, and how best you jockey for a higher position. That's the road ahead.
Absolutely. So there's one conflict, and Anand, then there's another one in light of Modi's, Japan visit. Xi here expected to make investment pledges, perhaps matching or exceeding the $35 billion plan that Modi received in Japan. Perhaps a sign of how Modi has been able to leverage the rivalry between China and Japan to maximize gains for India.
I think it wouldn't be entirely accurate to look at what China wants to invest in India as a response to what happened in Japan. A lot of these investments are things that have been in the works for several months. These are Chinese companies that have been involved in the Indian market for almost 10 years. If you look at the big deals that are going to come up in industrial parks. So I think for China, it's as much about their own self-interest in terms of finding a good market to put their money. And I think it would be a bit too simplistic to look at, Japan has put 35 billion, so these companies are now putting more. I think it's something more deeper than that.
Right, Gaurav, with both Xi and Modi, they're strong leaders. They've both shown initiative. They're constrained on the border issue by, say, domestic sentiment, particularly rising nationalism in China. How do you see that sort of affecting these talks?
Well, this is one issue that is on the agenda. What is the road ahead will be decided by the two prime ministers. The National Security Advisor was in Beijing recently. They've discussed several permutations, combinations, but there isn't a solution that's expected overnight on this issue. This has been a vexed issue for 50 years plus. It is likely to stay longer. The road ahead will just have to ensure how best can confrontation be avoided. I had accompanied then Prime Minister Manmohan Singh to Beijing when the Border Defence Cooperation Agreement was signed between India and China. It was hoped that will bring down tension at the LAC. There was also talk about increasing sporting activities along the LAC so that even when the two armies come face to face, patrols come face to face, there shouldn't be tension. But all of that is containing the situation at a very tactical level. At the level of Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Xi Jingping, the effort will be to take this relationship forward at a strategic level to find permanent solutions. But no permanent solutions are going to be found overnight. A very powerful India will ensure a powerful China respects India's wishes, and that doesn't just mean militarily powerful India. An economically powerful India is very important. At the same time, the two countries will engage with each other economically tremendously, as Anant was rightly pointing out. It is not as if China is doing India a favor by investing in Indian market. China expects to get great returns by investing in India.
Right, Gaurav, using what you're saying as a jumping off point, let me go across to Anant. Anant, China may be India's biggest trading partner, but the commerce between them has dropped. The figures are almost, anemic. So for Modi, boosting trade and foreign investment is critical to making good for the country and moreover on his campaign promise of creating jobs.
Yes, I think trade peaked in 2011 and was mostly because of China buying up a lot of Indian iron ore. And after the mining bans that we saw in Orissa and Karnataka, our exports of iron ore fell drastically, and it sort of exposed the trading relationships to be somewhat anemic, as you said. So trade has fallen actually in the last 2 years and hasn't risen. So I think what Modi wants to do is change this nature of trade relationship from being pretty much a buying-selling relationship and actually have Indian companies invest in China and more importantly have Chinese companies invest and manufacture in India and create jobs in India.
Gaurav, we've discussed the contentious issues, but another one that may just be, a sort of a thorn in the foot will be the long-time ally and India's rival Pakistan amid the outbreak of violent political protests in Islamabad that offers further evidence for those who are seeing a growing Chinese ambivalence towards Pakistan. So how do we see that sort of affecting, this bilateral visit?
Well, Chinese President Xi Jinping did not visit Pakistan as he was scheduled to do, given the uncertainty. Given that, even Pakistan has said China is their best friend and they will remain very close friends. There is no doubt about that. But China is also extremely concerned about the spread of Islamic terror from Pakistan. Pakistan being terror central of the world. Pakistan is not only spreading terror in India, Pakistan is also spreading terror in China, and China is extremely concerned about that. So that is why China is mounting pressure on Pakistan to crack down on that terror that's aimed at China. As far as Pakistan is concerned, look, we've had a history with Pakistan. Every time we've had a war with Pakistan, there was fear that there could be aggression from the Chinese side.
Right.
It wasn't the case ever. And China looks after its own national interest. If China engages very deeply with India economically, it will be in China's interest also to see a stable, economically stable India. At the same time, it is in India's national interest to ensure that militarily India remains equally strong and not subservient to China. And that is where you see India's look-east policy get a fillip, with Prime Minister Narendra Modi visiting Japan, with the President visiting Vietnam, with External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj visiting Southeast Asian countries. So India is engaging extensively in the region to ensure that everybody remains interlinked, strong, and there are checks and balances and countermeasures in place.
Absolutely. So both are sort of maintaining this sort of wary approach, but at the same time, both sides, that's China and India, have said that border disputes should not impede the relations. And you know, the recent years have brought sort of regular consultations between both the diplomats and troops on either side, you know, along the frontier. So, Gaurav, besides this, what are the other issues that could actually be contentious between Xi Jinping and Narendra Modi?
Well, a major bone of contention is China supplying nuclear technology to Pakistan. That is something that is a strict no-no, not just as far as India is concerned, but as far as violations of international protocols are concerned. So that is something that India will take up with China. The string of pearls policy will have to be countered by India increasing its sphere of influence in this entire region. So what India will hope to do, apart from engaging on the boundary issue, India will hope to tell China that investing in India is in China's national interest, in China's economic interest. Peace and tranquility along the borders is in mutual interest. And once again, India will hope to develop its army and its economy in such a way that it is not in China's interest to create tension along the LAC or even the LOC.
Anand, what's
Chinese,
interesting to see...
One more point.
Right,
Chinese in the presence in LOC is also a cause for concern. Chinese investment and projects in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir is a major bone of contention between India and China.
But Anand, it'll be interesting to note exactly how Beijing is viewing this. So what is the kind of sense that you're getting there? I mean, over here, there is definitely, you feel that the ball is probably in India's court, considering that several countries are courting Narendra Modi now that he is, risen to prime ministership. But how is Beijing viewing this entire meet? We know that there's big expectations here in India. How's China looking at this?
I think China has been very concerned in the last few months with some of its relations with other neighbors. If you look at relations with Japan, that have pretty much hit a low over disputed East China Sea islands, as well as relations with a number of countries in the South China Sea. So I think the last thing China wants is to have another relationship with a neighbor, with India along its western frontier, to go through similar problems. So yesterday I spoke to a Chinese official and asked about the incursion that was reported in Demchok, and the response was very much that, why do you people focus so much on the boundary? Let's put it to one side and focus on something else. And I think the reason for that response was that I think China is incredibly worried that it will be perceived that all of its neighbors are having the same problem. So for that reason, they need the relationship with India to be very different now.
Absolutely. So Gaurav, let's just use what Anand is saying as a jumping off point. China has a strong vested interest in preventing India in drawing too close to the West, and especially to Japan, which is enthusiastically, as you have been mentioning, courting our government. So what are the sort of clashing projects that we can see where China will attempt to have one up over the rest of the nations?
From what my sources in the government are telling me is the boundary dispute remains. The boundary dispute is not being sorted out overnight. So what India intends to do is increase its presence along the line of actual control. You know, there is a new corps that's coming up in the northeast. India will have a strategic force that is also going to come up. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, when he was a candidate to be the Prime Minister of this country at Pasighat in Arunachal Pradesh, at that point of time he warned China that get rid of your expansionist mentality. Even when the Prime Minister was in Japan and we were reporting on that visit from Tokyo, he said all around us we see incursions and countries that go into each other's waters or transgress each other's borders. That 19th century mentality has to change in the 21st century, and that is something that's the message that India expects to take forward. And China, this time we are told, as Anant was also reporting from Beijing, China equally keen to sort this out and move forward economically. That perhaps is expected to be the road ahead.
Right, stay with us. We also have Alka Acharya, Chinese affairs expert, now joining us on the phone line. Ms. Acharya, we have been discussing why this is so significant for China and for India. But more importantly, I've posed this question to Anant as well, just to get a sense of what's happening in Beijing. How is China viewing this bilateral visit?
Look, I think the Chinese have been speaking about, a strategic moment for some time, and India has also recently started to speak about this being a strategically useful, strategically positive moment, and we should use this as a strategic opportunity to build ourselves. Now, obviously, both China and India are keen to go beyond the income levels that are presently prevailing, to address the questions of poverty, inequalities, environmental challenges, and establish the foundations of a great power. I think for all its economic might, the Chinese are facing social and political problems on a great magnitude. So for both, this is a period of strategic opportunity, and hence the convergence to focus on the economic agenda and move forward. And then if you put it in a regional context as well, the role that India and China are expected to play in the economic resurgence all around. India has also started to seriously take its role in the South Asian regional rise, as it were. It is a key player. So I think a whole set of factors is coming to bear down, but the thrust of all those factors is geo-economic.
Ms. Acharya, let's just look at the personal rapport now. Let's just make a comparison here. So where the Congress had been paralyzed by an almost, a fear of sorts of offending Chinese sensitivities, and in the process ended up jeopardizing Delhi's ties with its partners like Japan and the US, Modi has taken a more confident position right from the very time he assumed office. So definitely, would you say that that has added in sort of boosting China's confidence in terms of, strengthening ties with India?
Look, I don't think we have to see things in terms of a leader asserting itself, or if anything at all, the China policy has in the main stayed on an even keel. Now, what the difference with the new government in power is that he's pushing forward the economic engagement in a far more purposeful fashion. You see that he, as chief minister, he had already begun this process, so he is probably less bound by the kind of concerns that plagued the earlier governments, particularly at the center, with regard to Chinese investment in specific sectors. And obviously now the sectors are opening up. You're already opened up your defense sectors. Your telecom is opening up. The new studies show that your railway modernization. And as a chief minister, his experience also, and I think this is going to be a critical phase in the coming years, the states in India and the provinces in China are going to be far more proactive and probably lead the process of economic rejuvenation of different parts of the country.
Mr. Acharya, stay with us. Let me quickly go across to Anant Krishnan, who's also with us from Beijing. Anant, Xi's visit to Maldives and Sri Lanka before coming to India, does it underscore Beijing's commitment to develop close links with the island states of the Indian Ocean on the whole? Right, we'll try and get back with that. But let me pose that same question to you, Ms. Alka Acharya. This Xi's visit to Maldives and Sri Lanka, he's going there, before coming to India. Does it underscore China's commitment to sort of develop close links with the other states of the Indian Ocean?
But that's always been part of their strategy towards South Asia and the Indian Ocean littoral. I mean, this has forever been. The only difference is that 10 years or 12 years ago, the string of pearls dominated the analysis of the Chinese moves in this region. Today, the string of pearls is less heard. Today, we are talking of connectivities which are going to bring more benefits to Asia. And China is somewhere in the middle of building these connectivities, whether they are rail or pipelines and road connectivities and so on. So I think it's nothing new. The question really is Indian strategy actually now taking some kind of a firmer contour to be able to match the Chinese, to be also associated with these huge changes that are sweeping across Asia? I think that's what we have to focus on.
Okay, so the China's plans for this maritime Silk Road, connected by this cross-border infrastructure, we believe that it will further cement Beijing's role in the region, as well as, Colombo has lapped up China's invitation. But India has been invited, but it remains ambivalent about the project, and because it's yet to make up its mind. So how do you feel that India should be reacting to this?
No, I think you have to see the project for what it is going to do to Asia. You can say that countries are lapping it up, but the point is, why are they lapping it up? I mean, here are opportunities being offered to take the whole process of economic engagement in a situation where, the globalization of the economy is taking place, and it's giving you an opportunity to make yourself richer, benefit your people. So the lapping up is obvious. I mean, the question really is, how does India see its role in the way in which this whole Asia, as I said, is being connected in a way like it used to be centuries ago? So you need to really put your minds to how India is going to see the big picture.
Absolutely, Alka Acharya, thank you so much for speaking with the headlines today. Let me quickly cut across to our strategic affairs editor, Gaurav Sawant, who's also back with us from Ahmedabad. Gaurav, as much as tensions are attempting to be quelled, seen from Delhi, it is another move in what can be called, remember, it was referred to as China's policy of strategic encirclement. So even as Indian diplomats, insist that they want cordial ties, tensions are rising everywhere. We can't deny that. Between the two giant Asian neighbors, as we are considered, in what is looking increasingly like a new great game with the US and other powers upping their stakes.
Well, US has said India is the pivot to Asia. So US wants India to play a decisive role in this region. Do we see India rise to the occasion and play that role? What we are being told by our sources in the Ministry of External Affairs, India. Never before in the past has India engaged so extensively with its neighbors in the region. So clearly India is all set to play that big role, whether it's with Vietnam, whether it's with Japan, whether it's with other forces in this region. Remember, just before the Chinese president's visit, the Australian Prime Minister also spoke of welcoming Prime Minister Narendra Modi as he visits Australia after the United States. So very clearly, India is engaging with all parts of the region. Is this to counter China? Perhaps. But will this lead to more friction and tension with China? Unlikely, because China would also realize that 19th century expansionist mindset does not work in the 21st century. Again, as Japan is extensively economically engaged with China, India hopes to economically extensively engage with China, and vice versa, so that business then overcomes tension. But then again, at the same time, as sources warn, militarily India will have to remain extremely strong, because China respects power, China respects authority, and when India displays that authority, China is expected to back down.
But even smaller moves, Gaurav, that we see that are happening, not smaller really, but globally, what's being announced will affect what happens back home. Because I mean, you look at US President Barack Obama's announced plans to set US Marines to Australia's northern coast facing China. From Beijing's point of view, India is in helping in what it perceives as an emerging US policy of containment.
Presently it is for India to decide how it intends to relations with other the region forward. India to decide the road ahead. And clearly in this decision making, India's engaged with other countries of the region play a very significant role. As of now, India hopes forge close economic ties with China, with Japan, with other forces in the region. So there are no solutions that are expected overnight. Deeply engaging economically will lead to less friction militarily or strategically is one hope. At the same time, you cannot let your guard down when it comes to China. That's the message that goes out from India.
Right, Gaurav, and let's just talk about the personal rapport. You know, this early exuberance given way to more like realistic appraisal. But Beijing's view is, you know, that Modi is a strong leader who can deliver. An early outreach to Modi was therefore seen as essential in making sure that Delhi does not sort of gravitate rapidly to an emerging anti-China coalition in the larger, Indo-Pacific, and the US fashions its strategic rebalance to the region.
Well, India is expected to play a bigger role in the Indo-Pacific region, and this recent engagement with Japan, with the personal equation between Prime Minister Shinzo Abe of Japan and Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India, the fact that Japan is changing its laws to sell military hardware to India, even if it begins with a UH-2, amphibious aircraft in its rescue mode. Now, initially, you taking baby steps to play a bigger role in this region. The Indian Navy is acquiring new ships. India exercising, carrying out military exercises, Navy-to-Navy exercises with Japan, with Australia, with America, the 2+2 exercises that we talk about. All of that shows India playing a bigger role in this region. The fact that India is emerging as a major maritime power and aspires to be a major maritime blue water navy in this region just goes on to indicate grand designs. Will it be followed up? You need economic muscle to follow up military dreams. You need to develop that economic muscle. That's the effort. It's happening simultaneously. But, like experts are warning, Rome wasn't built in a day. We don't expect decisions overnight.
Sushant Sareen, strategic affairs expert, also joining us on the phone line. Mr. Sareen, if you can actually, sort of take us through, we've spoken about all the big contentious issues that may, take these, the ties ahead or sort of strengthen them or maybe even weaken them. If you can actually, sort of shed light on the early exuberance that has sort of given the more realistic appraisal as in the way that Beijing actually views Narendra Modi now.
So I think there is a realistic appraisal as far as Narendra Modi is concerned, because number one, this is the first Prime Minister who has a simple majority. He's seen as a strong leader. He's seen as a guy who can give, a certain direction and a certain push to both domestic as well as foreign policy in India. And the Chinese have a habit of respecting strength and authority, which clearly they see in Mr. Modi. So there is going to be a serious engagement as far as Mr. Modi is concerned. But then, of course, the question is how far can Mr. Modi go, and how much the Chinese are willing to climb down from the certain stands which they have taken vis-a-vis India, or the kind of policies which they have followed over the last few decades vis-a-vis India. Whether they're going to be wanting to turn those policies around, which actually would go a long way in building confidence and trust between India and China, so that you can take this entire economic relationship and the strategic relationship to the next level. Otherwise, you will have economic interaction, you will engage with each other, but there will be the suspicion which will keep lurking in the background, and you will simply not be able to transcend that big obstacle. So I think the Chinese need to climb down. We also need to get our act together. And then, of course, there's a bright future ahead.
Absolutely. Sushant Sareen, a strategic affairs expert. Thank you so much for speaking with Headlines today.